I'm a trained public teacher
Oh, okay.
in elementary, actually through 8th grade. But, and I did teach. I put Ken through seminary so that weren't in debt by teaching and enjoyed every minute of it. And then over the years, I've done a lot of substitute teaching, and that's been fun. I've enjoyed it very much. Then I found that I enjoyed doing things for the church in teaching. That was the one thing I wanted to do. I don't play organ, I don't play piano. And being a pastor's wife for 40 years, the teaching was the thing I enjoyed. Ken and I also took lots of young people to on different experiences, and I was always a part of that and enjoyed that too very much. When we lived in Kenosha, the Kenosha the art museum in Kenosha had a course in Ukrainian egg dyeing, and I decided to take the course. And the next year, a friend of mine in the congregation said to me, "Why don't we teach this to the children?" Because she had taken the course. And we did. And when the children were doing this, some adults saw what they were doing, and they said, "Well, why can't we do this?" So the next year
They're having all the fun.
That's right. And so the next year we taught a class for the adults in the evening, and a class for the children during the day. And so that's when I started it in the 80s. And after every other church that Ken served, and I was with him, I would offer the course, mainly during Lent, because that's when the Ukrainian people do the eggs. It started years and years ago, before Christianity came to the Ukraine. They were dyeing eggs because the sun came out again after a very dark, cold winter. And so they dyed these eggs, and they dyed them with nature parts, chickens and rams and all kinds of animals, deer, on the eggs. And then they also dyed eggs that would represent a wedding or a special occasion, and then they would give the eggs to one another. And that was how it was started. Well, then when Christianity came to the Ukraine, then some of the symbols changed. The star or the sunburst became the Christmas star, and then some of the animals and that were of nature, and the swastika became the four corners of the world. And there were many symbols that represented Christian symbols. The crosses were put on, and the burst of the star, and that was part of it. The Ukrainian people were part of the designs, and children, I found that children could do things by just kind of scribbling on an egg. And so this is an example of that. This is probably a little bit more fancy than what children do, but they turn out to be beautiful. And so we've taught children all the way from, at least 4 years old up to 80. There are dyes, and originally they used dyes like onion skins and bark off of trees and needles and leaves and things of that kind. And those were the dyes. But nowadays they have chemical dyes. And so there are about 18 different dyes that you can use. And the way you do it is to have the dye, you decide what part of the egg color you want showing. And there is an instrument called the kiska, which you can put hot beeswax in to a little cup on the kiska, and then you put that on the egg, and the first one is probably white, and then you put the egg into dye, probably yellow the next color, and then you put wax on that yellow that you want to keep, part of the design. And then the next step, of course, is to dye it another color. And you keep going until you dye the last color, which is the background for the egg, like the background here of the egg. And and then you take all that wax off by holding it in a candle, in the side of a candle, and you take all that wax off. And I call that resurrection, because it's a dirty, dark egg. And then as you take all that wax off, all the brilliant colors come out. They're just beautiful. And they, of course, show many different colors. And then the background is a dark color, either black or brown or navy blue or any of those colors. And it's an experience of awe, and regardless of your skill, it still is beautiful. Many people get disappointed because their lines are a little shaky at first, and I have to remind them that that's their first egg, and they haven't done it for the years I've done it, or some other people. Some people have just a natural knack of being able to hold that kiska steady and are able to do it. And I have never kept track of the number of people I've taught, but it's got to be close to 100. And it's, or more. And people then teach other people. A gentleman who came to teach when I was in Greenfield, in the church there, he said, "Oh, I can't possibly do this, but I want to try." And he was an engineer, and he did beautiful eggs, just beautiful eggs. And when I left the Greenfield church, as we moved, he taught the class for 5 years afterwards. And so that happens. And Kara and her mother, Pam Moe, Kara Shamoon, and her mother, Pam Moe, have learned from me. And Pam Moe now teaches her grandchildren and does it every Easter with her grandchildren. And Kara is now teaching one of the classes at church. And Kara has gone way beyond what I can do. She just does beautiful, beautiful eggs. And so that's part of the thrill of doing it, and part of the importance of carrying this on. This is something the Ukrainian people do as a faith during Lent, a faith project during Lent. And they pray before they do it, and it's so important to them. I continue to pray that they are able to do it nowadays when things are so terrible in the Ukraine. And I have no contacts right now to know whether they've been able to do it. And so if we carry on that tradition for them and pray for them before we do these eggs, it's very important. I feel that I've learned a lot from this. I feel that God has given me a gift, and I'm able to share it with other people. And as a result, other people have shared it, and that's important.